Welcome to another video from the Voyager Middle School Robotics Classroom. Please check out our other video tutorials for more topics in 3D printing, 3D design, programming, electronics, those sorts of things. This video is the first video in a series about Autodesk 123D design. We are using an older version, 1.4. Also, some of the internet connected features don't work so well on our version because they don't play nicely with our firewall. So when we are saving things, we cannot save to my projects. We have to save to my computer. We have to specifically choose that, otherwise this will crash. We also have trouble with importing and opening. It's easier to double click on the actual file. It also will sometimes crash when you try and close the program. But it's still a very usable and very user-friendly program. It's a lot easier than some of the other programs in terms of making sure that your models are always 3D printable. It's really designed for that. Let's start with sort of the basics. You can see that there's a grid here. Our units are chosen in millimeters. They're easily changeable, but we'll stick with millimeters because that's what our MakerBots speak. And you can change how much the snap is as you move things around, or you can turn the snap off. I like to leave the snap at 1 millimeter. You've got your view tools on the side here to show and hide different parts of things to fit your model in the view, and these sort of typical pan, orbit, and zoom. These are easily done on this program using a 3-button mouse. You're going to right-click to orbit. You can middle-click to pan. That's clicking down the mouse wheel on most mice. And you can zoom with the scroll wheel. You can also use the view cube to maneuver. You can just click on it and drag it around. You can click on a particular face or edge, or let's see if I can get the edge. There we go. Or corner to see things from that perspective. The home button is also very useful in case you get lost. It'll take you to a nice starting location. You also have some options here in terms of switching from an orthographic sort of view to a perspective sort of view. Orthographic is where I keep things here. All your tools are up here, but a lot of the tools you're actually going to use from context menus. So whenever you are trying to do something to a particular object, you can click on that object or click on part of that object, and then a menu will pop up that will allow you to try out these different things, especially the construct, modify tools. Some of these pattern tools you want to come up here for, the combine tools, the text tool, and the primitives tool, and the sketch tool. But the move, transform, rotate, scale, those things will all pop up from the context menus. So to get started, there's two real ways in 123D Design to come up with things. You can start with a sketch, a flat sketch, and we're going to do that in some of our next videos. But in this video, we're going to just stick to the primitives. So the idea here is you can very easily just grab an object by starting with a box, sphere, cylinder, cone, or torus, and you just click the one you want. And then you can hover, and you can see you're just dropping a box into the scene. And you can see at the bottom here, this box is a 20 by 20 by 20 millimeter, because we're in millimeters, cube. So I can just drop this right here, and before I click to finish it, I can type in different numbers for these measurements, and it will make my box different dimensions. And then I just click where I want it to place, and now I have a box, and it exists, and it's 3D printable right away. In fact, this whole bed here, if you have a MakerBot replicator 5th gen or a replicator 2, this width here is the maximum width of both of those machines. The depth here is a little bit bigger than both of the machines. You want to stick under 150 millimeters if you're on the Rep 2. I think it's about 200 on the Rep 5 or the 5th gen. I'm not sure, but you can see that you can basically know all the time, as long as the grid hasn't changed size, which will happen if you move outside this area, you're probably making something that is 3D printable. The other things that you can do once you have some of these things down here is you can drop some more objects, you can resize them as you place them, you can snap to the centers of things, you can snap to the edges, you can snap to the corners, you can snap to locations. You can also move things around once you got them in place. So let's move around this box, for example. So you can see as I hover, it highlights what I could select, and when I click it, I have it selected. Now I can hover over individual parts and select those individual parts, or I can do something with the whole box that I've dropped here by using these: move, scale, and there are keyboard shortcuts for these too. If you're looking up here, you might be able to figure out what they are. If you use the move option, it will bring up a little widget that allows you to move in a very sort of logical way that's very similar to what they do in Mesh Mixer, where you can drag an arrow to move along either the X or the Y or the Z axes. You have a little square that will allow you to move only in that plane that is defined by that square. You have some circles on rings that will allow you to rotate. And each of these things, you can type in the amount that you would like. And everything in 123D Design is not permanent. So if I hit the escape key right now, it'll go right back to where I had it before I started that motion. And in fact, it can be a little frustrating if you don't know how to finalize things. So what's really important is that if you have something the way you finally want it, and I do recommend orbiting around and making sure that you look at things from different perspectives to make sure that you understand what it is that you're actually doing. Once you get it where you actually want it, all you have to do to finalize this move is just a left click, someplace outside of what you've got going on. So just click away from everything, and it will finalize your action. So now I've got two objects. So this, you can see this is kind of boring. I can put things together, but it's not very, I wouldn't say that so far the things that I could make would be very interesting. And if you have any experience 3D printing, you know that you're going to actually want to combine these things up if you're going to want to 3D print them so they don't print as separate objects inside of each other. So that's what this combine menu is for. You've got the standard merge, subtract, and intersect. So let's try subtract. Now it's hard to tell which one is mine is which, but it's a little bit like a math problem. The first thing you click is the first thing in the subtraction problem, and the second thing is the thing that you're going to subtract. And then to finalize, you click outside, and you can see that we've finalized a subtraction, and so you can make more interesting shapes pretty quickly that way. I'm going to undo that action by doing Control Z. You've also got these handy undo and redo. Control Z to undo, Control Y to redo. You're going to combine these things with a merge, and now they're one object. It's 3D printable again. I can also customize this object very quickly. So if I click on the object and then I click on an individual face or an individual edge, this little menu comes up and I have different options. So I can try out these different options and see what they do. So like if I try out shell, for example, you can see I can hollow this out incredibly easily. And the whole object is hollow, and I've almost got a whistle here. And you can see that I can make things very, very quickly. I'm going to undo that action. I can also make things look fancier very quickly. I can do that by selecting multiple edges, hold the Shift key. And then those edges, just to make things look a little more finished, the standard sort of finishing tools that you might be familiar with using in any sort of construction will pop up right up here from this widget. You've got tweak, which can be a little unpredictable in my experience, fillet, and chamfer. So if I chamfer this edge, I can easily say I want a 2mm chamfer here, and it just makes things look more finished. It makes things feel better in your hand, no more sharp edges, and it's very easy to do. And fillets especially, if you're trying to make something that looks like all the pieces are actually attached, if you're trying to make a figure or character or something like that, if you choose a fillet, it can very, very quickly smooth things out and make it look like those things were meant to be attached to each other. So that's a very cool way to make things look a lot cooler, a lot faster. So those are sort of the basics that I want to show you about 123D design. The last thing I could show you is the scale tool here. That's good for making things bigger or smaller, obviously, but it's also really good for reshaping things by choosing non-uniform scale. You can squish in 3 directions, the X, Y, and Z axes, and that's really good for really changing the way your object is. These are all 3D printable, solid objects at all times. If what you're trying to do is going to make it not a solid object, 123D Design will not let that action happen. It'll give you an invalid operation error, and you'll always maintain this. So you don't have to worry about things being a solid group like you have to do so much with SketchUp. So this is my introduction to 123D Design. Please check out some of my other videos for projects ideas and other 3D printing ideas using 123D Design and SketchUp.